Hey guys, this is Joey Ingram, and today the legendary Uri Peleg is going to review my play. Join me on my path to become a GTO Wizard. So this would be a single raise pot. I bet 30% on the flop. They call, I do up to the turn, and I pretty much know, like maybe I'll just walk you through somehow I think about some of these hands, and then we can go from there. So I gave the small bet before you bet and the 125. I pretty much know always like third pair, second pair. Like I use this one a lot. You pretty much know you bet, you very rarely ever bet the set third pairs or low pairs or king high. So a lot of my thought process is how do I mix my value hands, and then what are my value hands? And then when I get to my no made hand range, what exactly are my best bluffs? How do I balance them? And then what are the way, how do I identify those? Because I can normally tell on the turn, okay, well, I know like a sixes here is third pair, so I'm just going to be checking it. So, these decisions become generally simple on the turn.
Yeah, I mean, I'll throw something in there. So there are, like right now you have ace deuce 3, which is a very unique board. And the first question I'd ask you is like, is this a board to range bet the flop on? Because in terms of pattern recognition, when you have ace and two wheel cards, the other guy makes all the sets because he didn't 3-bet the low pairs, and he makes more straights than you do, generally speaking. So this board in particular for our exercise of what do I do after I range bet flop, this is not a range bet flop. It's actually in most positions you almost don't see bet this board, and like it's almost a board the other guy donk bets in terms of if we're kind of ignoring that and we're just looking at a third pair, and you could ask when if ever does an under pair bet. And again, the deuce and the 3 are a bit deceptive, because most boards, like imagine this was ace queen 9 deuce, sixes would have a very different hand value. So it's not so much about third pair, it's more about the board texture and kind of what your incentives are with your weak hands. And there are a few specific instances where this type of hand would bet. So the type of spots I would look out for when do you bet with a low pocket pair on an ace high board. Number one is multiple high cards, because the more high cards you have, this is worth less, but also just finding bluffs is tougher. Right? So you have both of those together. And there's another really cool one, which is an entire concept of like when do you bluff with showdown value? And that would never be sixes on this board, but is that one that you're familiar with? Like when do you bluff the turn with showdown value?
A little bit at Hold'em. I mean, you kind of seems like you bluff when you want to get, maybe you can kind of like merge, because you can set your price on the river and just check back, or you could potentially fold off some equity from their hands. So I would probably look for spots like that. I guess, how do you think about that?
Well, so just imagine, and we'll call this hypothetical, but let's say that you have sixes, and if you bet the turn, your opponent is going to fold with 7s and 8s, but he's going to call with 4s and 5s. So you often get these kind of situations, and they're specifically centered around draws. So if I bet the flop small, my opponent floats with some spades, and then on the turn he might be again calling deuce x of spades and 3x of spades, but then folding a bunch of pocket pairs. And again, depends on the texture a bit, but here there's not that much. But the theoretical idea would be that actually when you can bet a pair that beats the draws but loses to made hands, that often becomes we call it a showdown value bluff. So you're bluffing, but you also show it down when the draws miss, because say you would bet sixes on a turn, you would actually have a bunch of showdown value, and it's also a bluff on the turn at the same time.
So in this situation, would you prefer to have a spade that blocks some of their continue range, or it almost sounds like you prefer to reverse block the 6 of spades, therefore it might be a card that they could have, 5-6 or something like that, 6-2, maybe 6-3.
Yeah, so the way I think about it is I prefer a spade, because then when I river a set, it's not on a flush.
True. Yeah.
So
Yeah. So there are some, like, this is what I noticed earlier today during my session, was that there are some weird reverse, or there are weird implied odds with betting the flop with an underpair, because you can not only, one, maybe turn that into a bluff, but two, if you hit a set, then you have these like hidden implied odds where you have to hit it set.
yeah, like a pocket pair is half of a gut shot, right?
Yeah.
Like you have 2 outs, and that's like not outs are, you know this from PLO, how much more valuable not outs are than like sixes with the spades. But yeah, like we said, we can move on. It's just this is yeah. So how do you think about the river decision here?
River, when he bet the river. Yeah, I mean, when he bets this river, I would maybe call sometimes with a spade, but basically he would need to be bluffing with a 4 that's like a 4x, because I don't very rarely see people ever bluff with like 3-5 or 3-4, 2-4, or 2-5. So they basically need like king 4, king 5, queen 4, queen 5, which they could have, and then. But it seems like from my study with this is usually a fold of fourth pair, because you don't really, like, you have some sixes, which are kind of some cards you want him to have. So,
well, which sixes do you want him to have?
6-2, 6-3, 5-6, 4-6.
Yeah, exactly. So let's imagine you had sevens. Would you call sevens?
If I had sevens, I might actually think about calling a bit more. If I had a spade, then I might call it a bit more than without a spade, but probably not. Maybe I would if I had a good reason to believe that I thought this guy was always bluffing here with this king 4, king 5s, and 4x's and 5x's, maybe queen 4, queen 5, because those, if I fold those offsuited pre-flop. I mean, once again, this is kind of like a very, butt versus big blind 6 max. They're really not going to have it. I mean, they're going to have some suited ones, I guess.
So let me throw something in there in terms of the thought process. This is a spot where you look at your cards and you're like, are these a reason to call or a reason to fold? Because you have a million hands that beat all of his bluffs. And then we ask, well, which hands is our opponent bluffing with? And I think, like you said, a 4 and a 5 are hands he could be cards he could be bluffing with. There's a 6 as well in there, because it's, 4-6 and 5-6 are a bit more common, but not by much. And then, there's backdoor hearts, backdoor diamonds. And maybe some king highs would bluff, right, for your opponent. So then the cards that we don't want to have in our hand, we'd rather avoid hearts and diamonds. We'd rather avoid 4, 5, 6, and we prefer spades and clubs as much as we can. So, for example, what I'd recommend doing here, because you got a really easy one in terms of hearts and diamonds, but if this were like a club spade 6s, there's a very high chance this would be a call. And if it's a club spade 7s, it should, I would guess, maybe I'm very wrong, but I'd guess club spade 7 would jump into like 100% frequency plus EV call.
Club's basically blocking the spade with the 7, obviously the 7 club is an easy call. Yeah, I never even thought about that before, and it's a really interesting point. Yeah, what 6 is, so you're right. So basically you're saying that having the 6 of hearts and 6 of diamonds that block the backdoor flush draw, those end up being reasons to fold this river, whereas if we have the reverse blocker, then that's more of a reason to call, because they're going to be continuing to flop more, therefore they're going to have more bluffs on the river.
So let me try to, the way this spot works is you're going to have, your range is a million bluff catchers getting here after third pot flop. And in theory, your opponent is balanced, so your hands are 0 EV. So we're always looking for a blocker that's pushing it, like, is this plus EV or minus EV, right? And that's why you see even your hand, it's not losing very much. It's losing like minus 0.3. Switch the blocker around, and suddenly, like we said, the other guy's bluffing with king 6 of diamonds. He's not bluffing with king 6 of clubs. And king 6 of spades is actually in his value range. And 6-4 of spades and 5-6 of spades. So spade is actually actively good. And these are just going to shift your hand from, this is all theory and practice. If you have any sort of read, that's going to trump these effects. But to play this spot kind of over and over again, you really have to think about, what is his bluffing range? How do I, like you said, unblock the bluffing range?
This, let me put the cheaty code out of the side here. So this one on 20, I would probably bet sometimes with the 9, but I usually want to have spade here. So I probably would consider checking this and then bluffing potentially the river, depending on what the card is. And but I would probably bender sometimes. And I probably would bet. But I guess this small size, I mean, I probably wouldn't go small size. I probably wouldn't go for bet here. But if I went over bet, we'd have at least a 9 of spades or a king of spades, I would imagine. This combo probably would check. And then, yeah, I would check out 20. And then river, I probably just check and showdown, even though I probably lose. And it kind of makes this too interesting. Yeah. So basically it's like mixes everything. So I guess like this turn, it kind of does a little bit of everything, which I kind of maybe would have, kind of is what I said, but I guess I that was kind of my way of thinking about it, but more just like intuition. Cause I played this spot so many times where I know that they have some spades as their bluff, but then they also want to have a gut shot. You want to have some equity. So you want to have like a 9 or a 10 here. I guess the high card is good for maybe like improving on your hand, and maybe the 9 or the 10's better than the 5 and the 6 as well too. And those also kind of make interesting river bluffs. If you do bet here and you call, then maybe you mix in the river if you still have the blocker to 9-10, depending on what the river card is. So
and if you think about like what was the reason, so I think I agree with you about the turn. Generally, what most guys do here in practice is they simplify to having just one size. So they don't have bet 40 and bet 125, but you would have one B75 or
right on this spade turn, yeah.
Yeah, and this is the concept we were talking about, where the flush coming in. Now both of you guys have a new top range, so you can't go bet 200 like you could if it were like a deuce of clubs, and you can just put your stack in. And then for the bet check bet on the river. I think, again, just to kind of sharpen the thought process that you had, I'm guessing your pattern recognition was check this back because I have king high.
I have king high, but I would know that if they had a queen 10 here or like 6-9, they're always bluffing. If they have
yeah, exactly. And also
they're always bluffing worse hands than this, and they really never bluff the king high here from what I've seen. Like maybe they got king 9 or 10, maybe they got king 10, king 9, but there I got the black backdoor hard draw, so like they're just folding everything else on the flop with that, I guess.
So the way I think about this on the river as well is like which hand would you rather bluff, say king 9 or king 5?
Here, it's an interesting question because I have the 9, which is going to block 9-10, but then you might want him to have like 7-9, 8-9, Jack 9, Queen 9 as well, which is going to give him more hands to potentially fold. So maybe King 5? I guess I could say King 5, but I kind of do like having the 9 blocker.
I'll throw in a concept, but when you say 8-9 and Jack 9 and all those hands, those are going to be mixed catchers for him if you bet the river. The hands that he should presumably pure fold are low pocket pairs. And so having now I'm not sure versus B40 does he have deuces, 3s, 4s, 5s? I'd guess at least the ones with a spade. The reason those are pure folds is they double block air. When he has a pair, he's blocking 2 air combos, whereas when he has an 8-9, he's blocking only one card is blocking air. And so it's given those they never bet the river for him, and they pure fold when you bet. That's part of the reason king 9 should jump out, is like you really want to go bet check bet bluff with high cards if you can, rather than with low cards. So if you take like 5-3 suited would not be so it's not so much about the straights as about the pocket pairs. Or if you bring up like what is he folding on the river, it would be I might be messing the board up a bit. It would be like deuces, 3s, 5s, 6s, pure folding, and everything else mix.
And when you think about that one, that's an interesting way to think about it. It's like a way river. It's like blocker, blinched. Yeah, I mean these pocket pairs at 6 max are so different than heads up. Because heads up there's so many more hands, but like at 6 max, a lot of their worst hands are pocket pairs. They're gonna call it pre-flop, and they're gonna have by the river of the turn. So
yeah, pocket pairs are a huge amount more important in 6 max than heads up for sure.
So here he blocks river 33 he calls. So I the 6 is blocks a 5-6. The ace, I don't think he's gonna bluff ace high, which is nice. I think he's gonna have some 9-10s, Jack 10s, Queen Jacks. maybe with some backdoor hearts in there as well too. So here, normally, if I didn't have any spades, I would probably like mix here and call. So on the 36, I'd probably actually fold, but I might call some numbers here. So let's see if I'm right. Yeah, I probably mix and then, yeah. So it's like 81-19. But yeah, that would be my intuition, is maybe call here like 30% of the time, fold 70% of the time.
And is it saying call 80% of the time?
Yeah, it's saying call 80, fold 20. So.
And again, I think the interesting thing for you would be to think, well, at ace, what about, say you had ace deuce and say you had ace nine, and try thinking about like which, because you're going to have all the ace highs. You're going to have ace queen, ace jack, ace 10, ace 9, ace 6, ace 5, ace deuce, ace 3. They're all worth exactly the same when he bets. Which of these would you like to fold? And some of them are very clear.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at something like ace 9 of hearts, or ace 9 with a 9 of spades, right? Like
they want to fold ace 9, 9 of spades, yeah, because that 9 of spades is like a power blocker to
that blocks his bluffs. Yeah,
I see. Yeah, that's interesting.
Even
here, you basically don't want to if you have a spade, you want to fold. If you don't have a 6 of spades, you want to call. Wow, yeah. So it's all about this spade, which means that he has more bluffs on the river when he bets.
Exactly.
Interesting, yeah. King 8. We could spend a lot of time. Let's try to get some hands in here, and then let's see what we can do. Otherwise, we're going to spend a lot of time on every hand.
Yeah.
So here on 11, I would always check this on 11, and then river, once again, I'd probably just always check this down, knowing that I probably don't win, and he's got ace 9, and we don't win. So like this turn is like pretty standard, just check back all the time.
Yeah. But first hand, I'm not gonna add anything to what you said.
Yeah. Even though it does say that it doesn't lose that much EV if you do decide to bet any size, which really kind of confuses me, because then I guess it comes down to our opponent. If we think our opponent is folding more often than we should bet, if we think they're calling more often than we shouldn't bet, depending on what our hand is. So
yeah, I mean, that's one of the big differences between Hold'em and PLO, is that things are a lot less technical. Usually there are so many hands where you could go either way and there's no big price in EV. And if you actually look at the EV differences, even pre-flop, you can there's a big leeway in what you're doing in terms of the price in EV.
So this one, I would always overbet turn. It says it would mix 40 and 125. I personally would only overbet this board with the double draw and the straight draw out here. Even though we do block the queen, which is obviously not good. We want him to have queens here, but I probably would just charge the draw. And then I guess in this river, we'll probably just shove on the 78 and get called, and somehow he's got 2 pairs. So, I mean, I'm living a good life. But on this turn, I mean, okay, so is there any justification for not just overbetting your pure? Is your bet size like overbet or check 100 big blinds deep? Or do you think there's real merit to mixing, kind of thinking about it, small bet and big bet here?
Well, so I think this is really a question of how into the streets you want to get with people. Because you do have a group of hands that like the small bet, and the reason queens is mixing is that it's going there to defend those hands. Because
you said the soldier, you said earlier, it's like democracy, that sometimes the big bully want to fight and the weak guy got to go fight for him, and vice versa. The weak guy wants to fight, so the big guy got to stick behind and support him.
Yes, exactly.
So you're saying here that queens wants to support the small bets, which here there are definitely a lot of small bets on this turn. Maybe an 8, maybe a queen, maybe like a flush draw, maybe a 7.
Pocket 9s would love to bet small.
True. Pocket 9s, pocket 10s. You're right. They love that second pair here. They love that little like merge small size. So you're saying that I need to think about grouping, finding boards like that, and then even though my intuition tells me I want to be overbetting here and like let's get the fucking max and let's build a pot and let's make some money. The other way to think about that is you also want to be more balanced and support the troops.
Well, so let's go more to in practice. So in practice, what most guys would do here is they'd look at the solver and they'd say, well, you know, the big size is the important one here, and let's just not do the small one because my brain's going to break in half, right? It's like some super geniuses can do both of these, but I like, you know, fuck the small size and let's keep it simple. I'll play nines in the check back node. It's the same EV anyway, and, you know, just let this one go. But another way to approach it, which is one that I like to do a lot, is to look at the small bet and say, well, you know, this is clearly great for nines and, you know, a bunch of other hands. And my opponent needs to know how to respond to this. And the way he needs to respond is he needs to, you know, kind of attack this with check raises. Otherwise, my nines are going like bet, check back. My ace 8 goes bet, check back. My king 8 goes bet, check back. And all these hands in my range are super happy, and, you know, I don't have to play them on the nightmare rivers and everything's cool. So your opponent has to know how to play this node to stop you from doing it. And the cool thing about this is, if you think about queens as like a chess piece, and you're like, does he know how to attack? If he's, you know, he's this passive guy, he's scared money, it's a big game, whatever, he's never going to check raise me with queen jack on the turn when I bet 40. So you're like, okay, cool. He's not going to check raise his draw. He's going to check all his draw. So never put queens there. But then if he's, you know, this aggro online guy with a spark in his eye and a chip on his shoulder, whatever, I don't know how you profile him. But, you know, an aggressive guy, I'm not even going to bet nines on the turn for bet 40. It's going to be, you know, only queens.
Right, because you know that I mean, and that's probably what solver is going to solver if we know lock. I think that's probably going to tell us that. So that's something. I mean, you know, you're touching on a real like different topic, which is probably never ending battle, which is like there's this concept that if they dover check raise, then we can be bluffing a lot more in theory, right? I mean, that's kind of, so let's say here, for example, they're supposed to check raise 7-4, 75% of the time, but like, if we no lock it down, let's go with filters.
Well, let's do this. Don't no lock it. Okay. Just remove the option. Just delete the check raise.
Delete the check.
Yeah, click on edit. So we'll keep it short. And let's say they basically don't, as like a passive player, and well, of course, this would be a simplification. Now go back and look at your turn strat, and you'll see that, wow, you have a ton of hands that are very happy to go B40 if the other guy's not check raising. Right? Like we said, 9s, 10s, and 8x mainly, right? And of course, the solver is going to balance this range out.
With flush draw. I mean, all these seem intuitive. You know, obviously, this like, there are these like reverse blocker concepts I've been trying to get a grasp on, like here. I mean, I guess we have a straight draw, never mind 5-6 reverse blockers, but probably not as relevant here. What I always like to do, don't know what you think about this strategy. So if I look here, I want to look at what my bottom of range hands are doing, because I sort of already have a good idea, in my opinion, of what the top of the range is doing, which, you know, maybe that isn't true. But I do want to know where my threshold is for aggression, and then, you know, my exploit might be, okay, if I think this guy is maybe over folding, then I might pure bet some of these weaker flush draws, which might be not a good logic. You know, like a jack 4, jack 5, I think the guy's over folding the turn, then I might put these more in like a pure strategy versus like a mixed strategy. If I know he's like very underfolding against me, then I'm probably checking back here 100% of the time. So if it's a more GTO player, then I might try to hit this mix and go 50-50 sort of thing with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. So one of the tough things in poker is the guy who's overfolding the turn, he tends to overfold across the board. So he's going to overfold to bet, check, bet. He's going to overfold if, like, just to show you notes, go check, and put like, you know, any river, basically, that you want. And you'll see that when he bets, you're supposed to have a, you know, of course, the overfolding guy is not overbetting the river, right? He's doing some bet 50 or I don't know.
Yeah, he's probably betting 50%. Exactly. I noticed this earlier. Yeah, so he might, you know, he might
sell that. Yeah. And often he actually has two sizes, but yeah, let's say he goes bet 50 and hit the bet 50. and you'll be, well, you get to raise. And I don't know if you've looked at this node, but that same guy who's overfolding the turn, he's for sure overfolding to this. So that's a complicated thing about, like, an overfolder is going to overfold, but that doesn't mean that you the issue, and I would say exploitatively, if you kind of pummel on the overfolder, you just go bat, 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 bat. At some point, he's going to go, what the hell, I'm making a stand, right? And then he makes all his EV back instantly. So you really want to mix up your bluffing lines kind of all over the place.
Yeah, because I would play a lot more weaker players lately, and they just never fold. And like, I'm all about redlining hard. Okay, bet. I got range advantage here, but you realize like you just need to make hands against guys like that. Like, you can sort of take it to the streets, but it's just better just to make hands and do it that way. So
okay, this is a cool one. So let's see if you get this one.
So this one I would always call, because we basically reverse block 9-10, 6, 9-10. Queen 9, Queen 10.
7, 9, 10, Queen bad cards to have. So the fact this is Jack 6 and not Jack 7 is great. Like, it's actually big, right?
Yeah. The 6 to me really matters here. And also maybe some King Highs too. So I'd always call here, and we have Ace 9. So that's pretty normal hand.
Yeah.
This one I'd always check, and then river I would probably fold. On the flush, you would always bluff me. This one I would always check, and then the river I would probably not bet that size, so I would just check back, and I would I'd probably bet, like, if I was going to bet this river, I would bet 75%, kind of standard 2/3, 3/4 river bet here, get value from the 6, 5 deuce, and if he check raise me, then I'd want to not be happy, but I'd probably mix and fold more than call, and then yeah, I just wouldn't be worried if the guy had a 10. I would just expect him to bet the river. So that would kind of be my thought process on this board.
Yeah, so the river is one of those spots where theory and practice differ a lot, because in theory he should have traps and he should have check raises and all sorts of hands. And in practice what you get is both. Some players don't. And then Ace 9 is a very thick value bet if he's not trapping, right? If he just leads out.
Right.
And it doesn't even have to be not trapping. It could be he's not bluff check raising on the river. Like that might push this into thick value bet territory if you can safely fold when he raises. I'm not saying you can. And then there's a really cool thing about rivers is the timing. Because a lot of people give away their hand strength with the timing on the river in these small pots.
Mm-hmm. So they'll just check really quick. They won't think about it, and then
and then
they don't value bet here because they don't have anything. They don't have a 10. They don't have a.
Well, they don't have the top of the range, right? They don't have a hand that considered betting. And again, this is player profile specific. If you're playing heads up, some people do everything very fast, and some people trick you with timings. And if you're playing someone, you get to notice his timing every hand. This is a very common node. So whereas this is one of the issues with trainers, and a trainer, yeah, this is a check, but like, you're leaving a lot of money on the table if you think this is just a check in practice. This is very, very often a bet.
So this would be something where, like, you'd learn from using more node locking and editing the ranges and being good at range editing, which is kind of what I'm studying a lot of now.
Right? Yeah, this is just intuitive. I think this is like playing in the streets poker. Like, we used to always bet these 10 years ago or whatever, because no one defended the range. And then you're like, well, do you know how to do that or not? This one is interesting.
Yeah, I would always mix here with small, kind of the 40% principle, the small turn bet. And then here on a 4, so I probably split this. It's probably something to do here with the 8 of spades and 8 of hearts and how it mixes with the frequency. So I would probably just go 50-50 here on my own personal end. And I should be betting a lot more. Yeah, I mean, well, pretty interesting. I should be betting way more.
This says like bet 92%, right?
Yeah, bet about 92%. Bet about, yeah, exactly.
So I'll explain why and tell me if this makes sense to you. When the turn pairs a 10, of course you want to bet most of your trips. But other than trips, you have this region of aces, kings, queens, jacks, nines, eights, sevens, and they all have the same showdown value against your opponent's range, or very similar, right? Given we're a button, he 3-bet nines plus, so or in some eights. And so if you think and like, which would you rather bet, eights or kings, if you had to bet one and check one?
I would probably bet. So what I would bet eights because I want to fold off his high card hands that have equity against me still.
Exactly.
And maybe just so the sixes and fours too.
Well, so basically, like we said, they have eights is benefiting more from folds than kings is. Basically, because when you bet, you have you're getting value from the calling range, but you're also getting protection from the folding range. And how much equity did those folds have against you is a big incentive to bet. And so eights it is making more money betting than aces and kings. And if you think about your entire, like we said, six max is about pocket pairs. Think of all your pairs. And then you're like, I want to mix with this group of hands, pocket pairs. Now, this is only because the top card paired. Because usually you'd be like, eights and kings are not the same. I want to bet all my over pairs and get stacks in. But the second it shifted, we're like, well, I want to mix 50-50 with my pocket pair group, and I'm going to shift more checking with the high ones and more betting with the low ones. And then that would mean that sevens, eights, nines do a lot of betting, and aces, kings, queens do a lot of checking. And that's how I would think about this one.
Interesting. Yeah, that does make sense. I mean, I've kind of been like, I feel like I'm used to being so greedy on these boards. If I have overpair at heads up, that at six max, you kind of do have to slow your roll a little bit. And because
no, this is going to be per heads up as well. Once the 10 pairs, you're going to see that this would be true for a heads up sim.
Interesting. Yeah, for heads up, I'd be way more willing to bet it because they're just going to have a way wider range too. So I probably would be more. I mean, I'd be more inclined to bet my kings here too because they're not folding a 6 or a 4, and they're probably not folding their straight draws that are around. They're open ended. If they're double gutter, they're flush draws. So
yeah, definitely.
I'd probably mix still though. I mean, here I'm just mixing. I guess on the 14 I'm gonna mix, but yeah, better check. Check-ins kind of similar, smaller EV. I mean, I wouldn't go wrong here betting. I just think they're probably not going to have many nines, and they're going to have a 6, a 4, and very rarely going to have slow play 10s. So I probably would exploitatively bet here pretty often for a small size, but I wouldn't go over bet size. But I would.
Yeah. For a normal size, I think you always bet this one.
Yeah. Here, oh my God.
This is a cool one.
I'm just going to fold around 3-3. Yeah. You got a full house. I mean, turn. I don't know. I just give up here. I mean, yep, it's in similar EV to bet or check, but.
Well, which hands would you bluff with on the double pair turn?
8-9. Even though I guess I want him to have some 8-9s. Queen Jack with some spade, with like Queen Jack, one spade, one diamond, maybe something like that. Hands that didn't have an 8. I guess they would not fully mix though. Hands that don't have I guess undercards then.
So bring up the sim and look at his turn folding range. Start with these folding deuces through 5s. And then all the straight draws.
So we go small bet, and he is gonna be folding. What's he gonna be folding here?
Right? You can see deuces, 3s, 4s, 5s. And yeah, and here you have, like, there's not that many straight draws because the solver would have check raised them. But in reality, they are actually going to be here. So I'm guessing that the answer to what a bluff is just a bunch of queen high, jack high, king high hands as much as you can.
Yeah, and I guess it's his
and avoid having the deuce 3, 4, 5 if you can as well.
Yeah, avoid the undercard because the hands were fold.
So let's see the actual bluffing range.
Our bluffing range is gonna be, let's do both sizes hypothetically.
Is this showing the bluffing range now?
Yeah, right here. This is the ace high, king, and no made hand.
Ace high. So you is it trying to avoid having low cards? Looks like it, right? Like very, very underrepresented, the deuce 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, you basically never have a 3, a 4, a 5, unless you have a straight draw. then if you have A5, you have 4 or 5. But for deuces, that is the hand that they do want to make you go aggressive with. As always, they love deuces for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, deuces is like an on-blocker to the folding range again, because he's going to float you the least with hands with a deuce compared to all the other cards.
That makes sense. Okay, that's like deuces. Yeah, deuces seem crazy.
But yeah, I would say looking at this, I'd kind of ignore deuces and 4-5, because when you look at the structure, there's this special effect in No Limit Hold'em where sometimes the solver is going to throw out something just because it's very rare, and then due to it being rare, and your opponent adjusting. And so really what we see here is we have a strong preference for high cards for bluffing. And then we throw in like a random 1 or 2 combos of low cards just as a very rare effect. And then these rare effects, usually in practice, you don't even want to go for them because your opponent's not playing at that accuracy level. And then the level 1 effect of just, bluff 8 high to jack 8, 9, 10, 8 to 9, jack 9, jack 10, bluff this region, and just ignore the low cards. If you go just high cards, your opponent's going to call you with ace high low kicker and stuff like that, right? Because you never bluff the low cards, and those effects are not real, I would say.
Aces on the turn. Here I would mix between checking this size. He took aces, obviously. I'm never folding. And then river, do I ever bluff here? I'm just gonna check. Yeah, king 10. That seems pretty normal. Bet turn, small, call flop, call raise, and then river, maybe if he bets. I'd probably mix here and call a whole hell of a lot, and especially if the straight doesn't get in.
So the difference is, I think when you said you'd mix turn, I would think this is a very, very high frequency turn barrel.
You're saying we just got to get value for that hand on the turn and then maybe set up some implied odd situations by the river.
Well, it's also kind of so the holistic way to look at it would be, let's say that we have all of our pocket aces and we want to bet some and check some. Which ones would we bet and which ones would we check? And then you have... and then you have this thing like in PLO where when a hand is top pair and a set and a combo draw, I'm going to bet that one with all the components. And when it's just top pair, I'll mix in the checkbacks, or when it's just a combo draw. So this is like, it's the over pair and the nut flush draw. So you can check back some over pairs and check back some nut flush draws, but generally this is it's just a powerhouse hand. So I tend to...
and double suited aces.
Yes, and yes.
Yes, you got a backdoor straight draw and you got the nut flush draw on this turn. And you just gotta...
Right, like you can check back some middle set, but don't check back the middle set with the open ender, right?
Yeah, I see. That makes someone... I mean, it's just that strong a value. Yeah, that makes sense. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see exactly what you're saying. So, like, if I had ace of clubs here and an ace of diamonds, we don't have any...
You can mix check that, sure.
Right, exactly. Okay. And this one is just...
And if you had ace of spades, 10 of clubs also, so just the bare nut flush draw, you could mix check that. And then you get the same effect as checking this, it's just over different combos.
Right, I see what you're saying. Yeah, because on this turn, if I had like ace 10, ace offsuit, I'd probably mix and like maybe even set up, I got this like big bet turn strategy and these flush draws, because obviously you can see I practice it where, I do have some of that flush. I am going to use this overbet turn flush completing strategy, but I'm going to have my nut blockers. Obviously, I'm going to have some second nut blockers. I'm going to have some like reverse blocking straight draws and things like ace to 8, 10 here, king 10 maybe without even sometimes, low spade, even though I wouldn't hit GTO, but, I would kind of just build my own more aggressive range here. So yeah, I mean, I got to think about the small size
You don't have to. It's a bonus. Like this is like...
I like your whole small size concept though. It is like a weapon, because I feel like you can get a little out of line with your whole...
You can get very out of line with it against a bunch of guys. This is a cool one. I mean, yeah. So again, it's easy to click raise, or you have to remember to bluff sometimes when you're here.
I mean, I would never call. It says call some 20%. I mean, there's no scenario I would ever call here.
Well, so there should be one scenario. If all of their flushes are in the size that they bet, then you're like, do I want to raise into a range that has 30 flushes? Maybe not. If they have multiple river sizes, then generally speaking, you do get the raises. But that's because you can see on the 6 of diamonds, like how many flushes is he going to have? Every king X of diamonds, every queen X of, I don't know. Enough where this is not very easy to raise.
Yeah. I see.
And then your assumption raising, which is a practical one, is, well, no one's going bet 66 with a flush on the river, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd assume most flushes are going to go. I mean, they could go 66 over or overbet here, depending on what kind of player they are. I think a lot of players would just go overbet here.
Overbet or check raise or something tricky because they're excited to get the stack in with a flush.
Yeah, I mean, I would always like mix check or overbet here with a flush because I got queen jacks, queen 10, jack queen, jack 10. I mean, I have some like straight draws I'm going to call. I have some, maybe 3-4 suited, maybe not. Maybe I wouldn't have that hand. Yeah, I mean, probably set all those straight draws is really by me calling it on the flop that isn't at least an ace or a king or a 5. So on by the river, I mean, by 5 bluffs or what, like 5, 5, 8, if I'm full of flop, if I got to turn some sort of 5 into bluff here.
Yeah. On the river, why a 5?
Well, I probably wouldn't if I was, but I'm trying to think of like more bluffs that the big blind would have in the spot. I guess they would never be bluffing.
Oh, so you're asking how does the big blind bluff? And are you who are you thinking?
Yeah, exactly. I'm basically building the big blind bluff strategy to maybe correlate it with the raising strategy from our button position. Yeah.
Well, I think so. When you raise, you definitely want to unblock bluffs if you can, but also block the value range a bit because you're raising.
So a diamond and a 4 or a diamond and a 7.
Well, a king of diamonds, I think, would be a good one.
Okay, yeah. That's some more advanced stuff I've been thinking a lot about is, where do you guess you got to have a nut blocker. You always got to have a nut blocker is what I noticed, is that even if someone doesn't very, very rarely folds, the combos that you want to have are the nut blockers. If you can have it, the straight blocker, one of the nut flushes blockers, a power blocker, and that's a big difference between bluffing still, even though, they're probably not going to fold, and you're like mixed bluff stat. You probably wouldn't bluff against someone who's calling too much, and some people like you always can bluff certain cards here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean,
because one of the things with a driller it's really easy to click the right button, but really the question I see when we see a situation is, do I know how to play my range here? Do I know how to play my range here? No, not that like the specific hand is just a tiny fraction. It's more like, well, on this ace of hearts, we were talking about when do you bluff with low pairs? Do you know how many low pairs you're supposed to bluff here?
On here, how many low pairs? I mean, theoretically, you could mix a lot of your 5s on down as your bluffs.
So take a look at the sim solution. This is an educational one.
Yeah, basically, it seems that you have 5s, I guess.
Well,
with the flop back.
You see how you do have deuces, 3s, 4s, but then you have a bunch of 6x, and you have pocket 7s.
Yeah.
And when you look at 6x, are they all the heart ones or other ones as well? Like when you look at jack 6, 10 6. Yeah, you just go like.
Yeah, interesting. So this one is something that I definitely would not find, which is that these are like your reverse blocker bluffs I was kind of talking about earlier that are way less intuitive, but on certain range advantage boards where they're going to have a lot of draws on the flop, then you're able to do it in this turn. You're kind of able to and if they don't fold the turn, then you make them fold the river, I guess is kind of the concept. These are like your perfect river bluffs to have.
No.
Potentially, but maybe not. Maybe you're good on the turn, but they're not good on the river.
Well, they have showdown value on the river. Right? Because the jack 6 of clubs is beating all of their 6x of hearts.
True, and beating their straight draws and.
Yeah, so this would be one of those bluffs where you bet the turn, they fold their 10-9 and 9-8, and they call you with a 6. Right? So the pattern to look out for is when there are multiple draws, you often just want something to kind of own the draws.
And that's going to be something that doesn't have a draw in it.
Yes. Yes.
But
So
that also blocks some.
it doesn't need to block anything. It needs to beat the draws. So you can look at sevens as an example here.
So it needs to beat the draws. It needs to have at least one pair.
Well, sometimes beating the draws is having king high. Depends on the board.
Sometimes, yeah. Well, here they got, king high here, I guess, queen jack, queen 10. Yeah, no bet in the kings, except they're two pair kings.
Now, that the interesting thing to me is, with all these concepts, is I would imagine a lot of these carry over to pot limit Homa, but they're very difficult to see there because you have this, 4-dimensional matrix of hands. So you can't see what's going on in a visual way like now. But it would make sense to bet this hand type in PLO. And if you look out for it, you could look at the PLO solver and say, well, are you betting this type of hand where, he's going to fold his pocket ace, ace, whatever, but call me with a king high flush draw and I just have ace, king and rags, or king, queen and rags. And I'd be fairly sure you find those in PLO as well, if you look for them.
This is one of my hands. I like to bluff on the river because we reverse block some high card hands and flush draws that are higher. Even though we have the 9 of spades here, this seems like a hand where when we have 9-10, we just reverse block. I guess we have 8-9, which is not good, but we have a range advantage, and then we don't block all these other high card hands. That would kind of be how I would think about this. Even though, I'd be fine just giving up here and not bluffing as well and be happy, but the person in me would just say, I got to go for it here.
And what would you guess the other guy needs to call here?
He needs to call here with at least a 7 and maybe some 6s.
Yeah, this is one of those spots where versus recreationals, you have the both effect, right? Where all their 7s are a both, and then half the recs would just both call, right? So I'd say against a recreational, this is probably a very bad bluffing spot on the river.
Yeah.
Like against a weaker player, because they have this art, the poker computer game where, full house, their brain goes ding and, call, hit a full house.
Right. But against a recreational player, it would just be one of the stupidest things possible sometimes.
I think against a recreational player, bluffing the river for an overbet would be completely torching.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I mean, I guess this would be more of a play in GTO land.
Yeah,
when against a guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, against a guy that's like never folding, then I would just give up and maybe not even bet the turn, but maybe I'll bet the turn still. A lot of ace highs and king highs and stuff like that.
You can bet the turn and then check back the river and showdown win when they have 8-9 or whatever.
Right. Yeah. True, because you don't really need to get them off that hand anyway. This one, it's coming at 37. I would probably just check on 37. Then river, just pure bluff.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, that one, that's, for the most part, to me, I would kind of mix this over better check here. My intuition a while ago would say to bet every straight draw for overbet here, any 7-10, any queen jack, any queen 10, any queen, any 8-10, and I mean any straight draw here, any 5-8, no, 5-8, 5-8-1, yeah, 5-8 for sure, yeah. That would be my old intuition, but I've realized that you're just betting those too much, maybe. So GTO world, I need to check more to the back and not go ham with every shitty gut shot here.
You do, but it's interesting again to think about this from the perspective of the people you're playing with, because there are a bunch of people whose pattern recognition is, I have a draw on the turn, I'm gonna bluff. And then an exercise you could make is to node lock this kind of spot, make them bluff every straight draw, see what your adjustment should be, for example. But yeah, in theory, you don't get to bluff every draw. You need to mix checkbacks. You're going to have to play rivers. If you never have a straight on the river, you're going to get annihilated. As one example of there's a bunch of things going on. But yeah, actually, GTO lets you make people bluff every straight draw. But yeah, I think like you're saying, 7-5, for example, is never bluffing on a turn. All the jack 10, queen jacks are mixing. 10-8 isn't bluffing very often. So there's a lot of checking back with straight draws for sure.
Yeah, 10-7, 10-8, Queen Jack, Queen 10, 10-8. Most of these ones are out. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't even know how to like. See, this is why I would probably simplify here and just say I'm gonna bet all my straight draws. You know what I'm saying? Like I'd probably look at this and be like, okay, maybe I just should bet all my straight draws here and not really worry about.
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it and want to see more strategy content, I'd recommend checking out this GTO Wizard video next.